Okay, next thing is negative powers. We had a look at some multiplication, some division, and some brackets, and a zero power in the couple of lessons that you've done before on Chapter 6, which is indices. The next thing we're going to have a look at in Chapter 6 is negative powers. So basically, if you have a negative power, it means that the term itself is in the wrong spot. So when I say wrong spot, what do I mean? This means either the top or the bottom of the fraction. So if I have a fraction, if it's up the top and it has a negative, it should be down the bottom. If it's down the bottom and it has a negative, then it should be up the top. So all the negative means is that it's in the wrong position. Once I put it in the right spot, the negative is no longer needed. So once I put it up in that correct position, then the negative isn't there, but the power remains the same. The power doesn't change. All the negative is telling us is it's in the wrong spot. We put it in the right spot. The power is the same. The negative goes away because it's now in its correct position. Let's have a look at the first example. Y is to the power of negative 7. That negative indicates that it is in the wrong spot. Now, it's not part of a fraction at the moment, but if you remember, everything is part of a fraction. Every whole number is actually over 1. So it's currently sitting at the top of a fraction, and it needs to be on the bottom of the fraction. So I'm going to draw my fraction line and write y to the power of 7 down the bottom. Now I've written it down the bottom, it doesn't need a negative anymore because it's now in its correct position. When I have nothing on the top of a fraction, I can't leave it blank like I always leave the over 1s blank. I have to actually write a 1 in. So if I had k to the power of negative 11, then again, it's over 1 currently. The k, I need to make it a fraction, is sitting on the top of the fraction. It's a negative, which means it's in the wrong spot. To put it in the correct spot, it needs to go down the bottom. When it's in its correct spot, I no longer need to write the negative in, and there's nothing at the top, so I must fill it in with a number 1. Let's have a look at what happens if it's in the wrong spot on the bottom. So m to the power of minus 3 means that it is on the wrong spot, and it's currently on the bottom of a fraction. So to get it in the correct spot, I need to bring it to the top of the fraction. So m to the power of 3, I don't need the minus anymore because it's now in its correct position. I don't actually have to write over 1 because remember we said anything that's over 1 is actually a whole number. So I can just write m to the power of 3. Number 3, I have a fraction to the power of a negative 6. So I'm going to apply my powers rule that I used before with brackets, and brackets means times. These powers inside the brackets are currently a 1. So c is going to become to the power of negative 6 over 1 times minus 6 is minus 6. d, 1 times minus 6 is minus 6, becomes to the power also of minus 6. Now, given they both have a negative, they're both in the wrong spot. So drawing my fraction line in, the c is on the top, it needs to go to the bottom. The 6 becomes a positive because it's now in its correct position. The d is on the bottom, it needs to come to the top. So the d now has a positive power of 6 because it's in its correct position. Let's have a look at number 4. Number 4 says we've got some multiplication to do. So let's just do the same thing we did in the previous exercises where we add our powers if we are timesing together. So a to the 3 times a to the 7 is going to give me a to the power of 3 plus 7 is a total of 10. B to the 4 times b to the power of minus 6 is going to mean I have to add those two numbers together. Now you shouldn't need your calculator, but 4 take away 6 gives me a total of minus 2. If I've got 4 and I take away 6, I end up with less than I had to start with and 2 less. So that means that I need to now write my b with a positive power. That's also one of the steps in simplifying, is making sure that my powers are always written with a positive number. A to the 10 is positive, nothing is wrong with that. It's currently going to stay in its position. Now remembering that this is actually a fraction over 1, so a to the 10 is staying at the top because nothing is wrong with it. It doesn't have a negative, it's in its correct position. The b does have a negative, which means it's in the wrong position. So if it's currently on the top, it needs to go to the bottom of the fraction. It becomes a positive because it's now in its correct position. Let's have a look at number 5. Number 5 is asking us to evaluate. Evaluate means to find the answer, and generally that means we need to use our calculator, and it means that what we have are numbers with powers. So it means we can actually get an answer. So on my calculator, I'm going to do exactly what it tells me to do. 8 over 4 to the power of, I need to use my power of button here, negative 3. 8 over 4 to the power of minus 3. Press equals, and I'm getting an answer of 512. The other thing I could write is if I knew this was 8, and up the top of my fraction, which is going to make it times, would become 4 to the power of 3. Alternatively, as soon as it says evaluate, pick up your calculator and use it and type it exactly in as you see it carefully. You will get your answer straight away. Let's have a look at the next one. I see evaluate. Great, pick up my calculator. Type it in exactly as I see it. Fraction, minus 6 on the top. On the bottom, 2 to the power of minus 1, and check if I got it right. Minus 6 over 2 to the power of minus 1. I have. Press equals. My answer is minus 12. You now have enough information to be able to work on exercise 6.5. Questions 1, 2, 3 and 5. We're skipping question 4 and you're just doing the first column only again.